All right, guys, we're back for the Wake Forest edition of the Osceola Tailgate. Big ball game in Tallahassee, back with the usual suspects, Osceola football analyst and former FSU offensive lineman and college football coach Mark Salva, Osceola recruiting analyst Charles Fisbein, and former FSU alum and Tampa Bay radio host JP Peterson. Guys, welcome to the show. A lot to talk about. JP and Fish, obviously glad you guys are safe. You guys are down there in the Tampa area and South Florida area. I know, Fish, you said you're doing good. JP, you managed to get over to Orlando, where it's a little bit safer, at least from the storm surge. But just tell us how everything is down in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, evacuated downtown Tampa. Just worried about the flooding and the power outages because downtown Tampa, South Tampa is just a little thunderstorm. You get a lot of power outages. So I said I'm heading on over to Orlando, a little higher ground over here, and a nice new neighborhood where my girlfriend lives, and all underground utilities. So hopefully we don't lose power, but. Obviously, the storm is on its way here. It's going to hit here probably in about we'll get the full force of it probably in a couple hours. It's going to go right over the top of the eye wall. So we'll probably get 75-mile-an-hour winds. But I've been watching the devastation all over the state in Fort Myers and Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda. They got it by Charlie too. We kind of joke sometimes that there's this ring of Indian burial mounds. I'm not sure if you guys know this. All around Tampa Bay, these old ancient Indian burial mounds surround the mouth of Tampa Bay, and I'm convinced now that that's why we never get hit. It's
I'll tell you why. The reason is because when my father-in-law puts up his boards, it automatically repels and it hurts the ear. That's our family joke.
There it is. And I thought it was the Indian burial mound.
No, it's when Bill Williamson puts up his boards on his house.
Yeah, well, that works too. But whatever it is, God bless them. And I hate that it happens to other parts of the state because they're getting just completely inundated and flooded. So certainly our thoughts and prayers go out to all those folks in Southwest Florida.
Yeah, as JP said, thinking of everyone, obviously from Southwest Florida and even all the way over to Jacksonville, as this storm is going to cause problems throughout a significant portion of the state. It will probably affect attendance on Saturday afternoon in Tallahassee, both with fan-wise and recruits. But what we think at this point is that we are going to see a football game kickoff at 3:30 in Tallahassee with number 21 Wake Forest coming to town to take on number 22nd ranked Florida State. That's right. We have a ranked matchup in Tallahassee for the first time since I believe the opening game of the 2018 season when Virginia Tech came to town to start the Willie Taggart era. And we are now in the third season of Mike Norvell, and he has got this team trending in the right direction. Guys, we had let's move backwards before we go forward. Huge blowout against Boston College. I want to ask each of you the question there. What was your biggest takeaway from that game, and why was it important to win the game the way they did? And Mark, I'll start with you.
Well, I said it in our reaction video. The thing I came away with is the fact that Jordan Travis has mastered the offense. It's just the way it runs. It's so smooth now. I mean, the fact that we're playing really clean football right now. Think about it. Think about the lack of penalties compared to past years. Think about the turnovers. The lack of turnovers and the defense getting turnovers. I mean, we're playing winning complementary football right now, and it's a definite culture shift by this team. Because look, in past years we would play down to the competition, we would shoot ourselves in the foot, we would make things really hard, even if we had better personnel and we were expected to win the game. We might even lose a game like that in the past few years, right? So the thing I took away was we're playing winning football. The quarterback has mastered the offense, and there's just a big culture shift that's really evident to me.
JP?
I think Mark nailed it right there. I'm a big culture guy. And I talk about it. I observe it. It's the best way, I think, to really get a feel for where teams are headed. You can usually get a feel for it if you're around a team. The coaching staff, do they know what they're doing? Are they getting the right people? That usually portends good things. And I think we've seen that for a little while from Florida State. We kind of saw it at the, even last year, we saw the fight in this team where they didn't, in previous years, they would get down and just quit. They came back against Notre Dame. They came back time and time again. So you were hopeful that this was going to carry over into this year, but it doesn't always happen that way. And then when you saw the LSU game, you were like, okay, we actually can win the trenches on both sides against an SEC team. That is, honestly, I didn't think I'd see that for another 2 years. So I just, this game just confirmed to me what I've seen all year long, is that this team is much further ahead than I thought they were. Mostly because I see them winning on both sides of the ball, and I see a culture emerging that these kids do not freaking quit. That win in Louisville was very impressive, the way they came back and won that game. And so, then you go to a team that's overmatched in Boston College. Okay, so do what you're supposed to do. From the very beginning, from special teams, we're seeing special teams emerge as well. That's been a theme this year. You take the kickoff back, and the atmosphere. You can feel it through the TV. It was Doe Campbell, circa 2013. We were dominating a team we should dominate. We were running the football. We were executing. The quarterback knew what he was doing. The place was rocking. It was like, damn. I don't want to say we're back, but man, it sure feels like we're back.
Yep. Well, we're fixing to find out with Wake Forest, NC State, and Clemson coming up. That's for sure. Fish, what was your takeaways from Boston College, and why was it important for FSU to win the way they did?
Well, I didn't get to watch the game Saturday night, but I did watch the whole thing on Sunday. And it actually is. I like actually watching the games the next day because you already know what the results are, so you can watch it with more of an open mind and not have that stress of the game. It was very impressive. Like JP said, when you dominate teams, that's how you know you have a good football team, is when you dominate the teams you're supposed to. I mean, how many times the last few years did they play a team that was not as good as them and they played down to them? They suffocated them early. They honestly took the game. That game was over after the first quarter. You knew at that point they were in total control of the game after one quarter. They dominated all three phases of the game: offense, defense, special teams. They were very well coached. It was an impressive performance all the way around. And looking forward, I mean, you go from a team that, I thought was a 7-win, maybe 8-win team. You could think bigger now because of the way they're playing. I mean, you could argue that they're playing the best football in the ACC right now among all the teams. And I didn't believe that could be possible before the season started.
Yeah, I agree with everything y'all said. I thought it was critical that they come out and take care of business. Nothing that you saw watching Boston College and nothing in your research indicated that they would be able to do anything offensively against Florida State's defense. And obviously, Florida State's got better athletes on offense than they had on defense, and all that showed itself. But certainly, the way they took care of that team, as you said, Fish, that game was probably over by this when it was 17-0, right?
Like it was over at the coin flip.
Yeah,
it was certainly over by probably the end of Trey Benson's opening kickoff. But listen, there was no letdown. You were still missing some key players in that game. No Fabian Lovett, no Jared Verse. So to me, it just shows another step in the maturation process of this team under Mike Norvell. And of course, the other thing that stood out to me, and because it was such a position of need the last couple of years, and I'll talk about two positions, the continued depth they are building at wide receiver. Darian Williamson had the most catches. I don't think anybody would have put any money on that going into that game. He had played very little up until that point, just from a statistical standpoint. And then, of course, the continued development of Kalen DeLoach at linebacker. So those were besides taking game control and taking care of that game, those were the two things that stood out to me. But now we get to what we've always thought was going to be the toughest part of the schedule. And you've got Wake Forest coming in here 3-1. He very easily could have been 4-0 after losing to Clemson this past weekend in double overtime. I believe it was 51-45 or 51-44. But anyway, they lost in double overtime. Tremendous effort by Wake Forest's offense for sure. Listen, just want to ask you guys this question. Sam Hartman is the 8th rated passer in the country, the first rated best passer in the ACC, statistically speaking. And you got Jordan Travis, who has not played in 4 full games, missed obviously 3/4 of the Louisville game, still in the top half of the country as a passer. Are we through 4 weeks? Are we going to see a game with the best 2 quarterbacks in the ACC playing?
Mark, you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue the point, that against that. I mean, DJ Gulele had a good game last week, but he's been inconsistent. Is it Devin Leary, the NC State quarterback? I think he's kind of underperformed a little bit this year. I've seen a couple of games. I haven't seen all his work. Those were 2 that were highly regarded. The kid at North Carolina is highly regarded. Malik at Louisville. So yeah, you go down the list, and these 2 are winning games. They're performing at a very high level. The way Jordan is placing the ball, where he's throwing the ball is, I mean, he's not just dinking and dunking, man. He's throwing the ball downfield, and making some really nice throws. And plus the threat of his legs, which he hasn't had to really use a whole lot. He used it a couple times on Saturday, down in the end zone, and then that run in the middle of the field. And then I look at Hartman, man. That guy's got he's got it, right? I mean, that guy is poised. He's got command of his offense for sure, and throws a really nice ball. I think I would have to say, you got the 2 best in the league right now.
JP?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Jordan's playing at an extremely high level. You look at his 3rd down conversions, and then you look at his escapability and the playmaking that he's doing. His leadership is unquestioned. I love everything he's doing. The accuracy of which he is throwing the football as well, and the anticipation. I mean, there were some throws the other night where, he's just receivers are still in their routes. They turn around and that ball's hitting them right here. I mean, and he's letting it go with anticipation. I don't see any flaws in his game right now. And by the way, he's a pretty damn quick healer too. I don't know what he did to his knee there, but to come back and be that mobile in the game. I noticed he was like throwing the ball and then jumping up a little bit. I wasn't exactly sure what that move was, but whatever. He looked fantastic. And Hartman, I mean, that kid's got, I've been watching him play for far too long. I don't know how many, he's been there for about 8 years, but this guy's is accurate. I mean, he's not going to knock you over with the velocity, but, he throws with great anticipation and accuracy. And, with Perry and the guys that he has, the receivers, the big receivers that he has, the way they run that offense. I mean, FSU is going to be challenged in many, many ways defensively. And they haven't, going back to last year, they haven't handled it very well. That I know we'll talk more about the delayed handoff read, whatever the hell you want to call that, the delayed mesh point. But yeah, these two quarterbacks I think are the best in the league. Well, we don't want to talk about Van Dyke. Everybody told me he was the first round pick, like
right now, pick. Last time I heard, he was not even playing for his own team. So.
Yeah, don't you have to be a starter on your team to be a first round pick? I don't know.
Mario.
What did we read preseason? That Van Dyke and Anthony Richardson are going to be the first 2 quarterbacks off the board.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who wrote that article, but
that, man.
Listen, the fascinating thing about Van Dyke is I think it's only part of the reason he got pulled. Earlier that week, he had made the comment about Texas A&M game about how nice it was to play in a college environment, that they don't get to do that at home. So I think that I think there was a little frustration with him there.
He wasn't wrong. Yeah, he wasn't wrong.
No, he wasn't wrong. He was as accurate as any pass he's ever thrown with that comment. There's no doubt about that.
I got hammered last year when I told everybody, and I had spoken to former coaches that were at Miami. I said, you guys all like Van Dyke. I said, supposedly the guy behind him's a lot better. It's crazy though how quickly you go from one of the top quarterbacks in the country to like he hasn't just struggled in this game. It's been all 3 games or 4 games that they played in this year. He hasn't been very good, but let's talk about Hartman.
Yeah,
that's what I want to talk about. I've been a big fan of his for a long time. I go back, and this shows you how old I am. He reminds me of Ty Detmer, going all the way back to a BYU quarterback. He just places a ball like perfectly around
Detmer's a Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
there's some foreboding there.
Hartman, he's not going to make the Heisman Trophy ceremony, but he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I mean, you look, 13 touchdowns and 2 picks, and I don't believe he's played in every game. I think he missed at least 1 or 2 games.
Yeah,
he missed the opener. So, you look at his stats in this last game: 6 touchdowns, almost a 70% completion rate, and 337 yards. And if you watch that game, he literally dropped the ball like it literally just dropped out of a chimney into these guys' hands. And he torched a Clemson defense that I think defensive line-wise and up front, their front 7 is as good as anybody in the country. So it's going to be a fun matchup. Yeah, I mean, listen, I've always said I wasn't a huge Jordan Travis fan. I've always respected what he's done. I think he's made himself a very good quarterback. He's played above anything I could thought that he'd ever play at. I never thought he could play at this level just because of his limitations. He doesn't have a great arm, but he has gotten a lot better at the placement and the anticipation. And you know what? That's all credit to him. I mean, you know what? He proved me wrong, and good. It's good. Florida State needed it because they needed a quarterback that was more consistent than what we've seen the last few years from him.
Well, listen, there's no doubt he has gotten better, but there's also no doubt that it helps when the ball is snapped, you're not automatically running for your life from the get-go, which has been what he had to do the previous 2 years. And then, of course, had almost no one he could consistently rely on to throw the ball to. And, of course, that has certainly changed. And the running game should be in good condition. So I think it's the best team he's played on, which certainly helps his performance. But, yeah, I think right now they're playing as good as any 2 quarterbacks in the ACC. I know the kid from Duke is having a hell of a year. That's one of the reasons they're 3-1 and almost beat Kansas, a much improved Kansas team. And we'll get into a little bit of the coaching dynamics of all that later. But I think it's 2 hottest quarterbacks. I think they both have to be extremely confident after what they've done their first, Jordan 4 games, or 3 1/3, and then or 3 1/4, and then Sam Hartman in 3 games he's played. But he certainly looks like he's back to health. Now, a lot of people thought this was going to be the Sam Hartman and A.T. Perry show, and A.T. Perry at 6'5", about 220 pounds, probably deserves a lot of the accolades he's gotten. He is their leading receiver with 16 catches for 273 yards, but they have what's surprisingly deep wide receiver core at Wake Forest, maybe the deepest in the ACC, with Jamal Banks, a 6'4" kid, 15 catches, Donovan Green, 14 catches at 6'2", Keyshawn Williams, 10 catches, and Taylor Moran, 16. And they've got another 5 guys that at least have 1 or more catches due to the season. Mark, just talk a little bit about what you think about that wide receiving core, and how does Florida's, and we just talk about how they defend those receivers, and then we'll get into complementary piece to their offense after you talk.
Well, I mean, look, you got to make a decision. Are you going to play coverage, or are you going to pressure, and try to take care of that running game, influence Hartman? So that's going to play into it. I mean, it's very scary to think that you can play 4 quarters of man coverage against those guys, because you're going to get burned. And Clemson tried it and didn't work out real well for them, right? So I guess the best answer is you're going to have to mix it up and be timely. The other option is that you zone dog a little bit, play some zone, maybe bring 5-man pressures to try to influence the running game and get Hartman uncomfortable. But to think that you're going to play man coverage against those guys for 4 quarters and be successful, I mean, you're playing with fire if you do that.
Yeah. Fish, what are your thoughts on those receivers? I know you've seen them quite a bunch.
They're very, very good. I mean, listen, what Clawson's done just with that roster alone. I mean, Wake Forest went from one of the worst teams in the conference to what they are now. He's done a phenomenal job of, these guys, they're not just big. They can run. They could get behind you. They can stretch the field. Each one has a little different thing that they're good at. And what they do is offensively, they get the ball out of Hartman's hands really quick. So it's hard to defend big guys, positioning DBs, trying to get DBs to get good position on these guys, especially when the ball's coming out of his hands so quickly. I really like what they do offensively. They mix it up. They do a very good job. Everybody talks about the mesh point and how Hartman holds that ball so long, and he makes it very difficult to get anything on him. I mean, FSU, I don't know if Verse is coming back this game. They really could use somebody that could get some pressure off the edge and get him out of his comfort zone, because if he has time to throw, he will pick you apart. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, listen, I watched that game the other day, and of course, I knew about A.T. Perry. I knew they had at least one other guy, but I don't think I knew about it as much about Jamal Banks as I did, and he's had 4 touchdown catches in the last 2 games alone. So they've got plenty of playmakers outside of Perry, and of course, listen, whether it's highly productive or not, that mesh play, Mark, which is part midline option, part delayed draw type stuff to it. To me, they've attempted to run the ball just about every game except one consistently. They've been kind of dedicated to it. In fact, Mark, would you be surprised to hear that they've run the ball this season more than they've passed it?
No, not necessarily. I think the beauty of the design of this offense centers around that action, yep, and the ability for Hartman to read the box and either pull it and throw it. I mean, this offense is the epitome of take what the defense gives you. Okay, and that's the beauty of it. And look, that mesh point, I was looking at it pretty close that first half of that Clemson game, especially before our game, and I had a kind of a realization. You know what they're doing. And because I'm looking at the way the linemen are blocking that play, I'm going to get a little technical here, but it reminds me of when we were in the eye and we ran the old sprint draw with like Amp Lee and Sammy and Dexter and those guys, right? I mean, the linemen basically they pass set right on the line of scrimmage, and they squeeze off all the down linemen and combo them. And they just kind of hold them there and just kind of press with their feet with a vertical spine. They're not coming off the ball flat like a zone play or something like that, because you're not going to maintain contact long enough. Guys will slip off of blocks and you'll get in bad positions. And so what they do is they slow block it and press like that. And the back just kind of finds a hole. It's kind of like Amp used to do when we were in that sprint draw. He'd get that deep handoff and he just find a little seam and jump through it, and he's gone, right? And that's what they do. But with that action, with the slow ride, in Hartman's eyes downfield, he's able to. A couple things are happening. Number one, that slow ride, those linebackers and those safeties, you don't know what to do. It really frees them, puts them in a bind, especially if they have pass run responsibility, right? So to me, I'm like, okay, well, how do you defeat this? Well, obviously better men than me have tried to do that and not been successful. But to me, it's going to come down to, beating the line of scrimmage. It's going to come down to, and if it was me, I would find ways to facilitate single blocks along the line of scrimmage, whether it be getting a bare front, where you're covering all the front linemen, and guys are going to have to win and get off blocks and disrupt that mesh and disrupt Hartman. If you can do that without having to play a lot of man coverage, that's ideal. Back when we used to play Nebraska and Tommy Frazier, and they'd run that freeze option or that belly option. When we used to blow it up, it was because we had Dan Footman and Sterling Palmer and those guys just bearing down on the quarterback. And by the time he got his hand out, it'd be all blown up, right?
Let me ask you this. Now, that's not typically what Adam Fuller has done. He plays not really a true two-gap heavy technique and not really a two-gap system but they do play a little bit of a heavy technique, read and react type thing with their front four. Is that and from what you're saying, I think what you're about to say is the best way to try to reestablish the line of scrimmage and move it back. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, I think because I think you're playing right in their hands if you're going to read and react, because you can't be right. If you're reading and reacting, you can't be right, and they're just going to go on whatever you do. And so I think you got to force the issue. If it was me, you got to force the issue and understand what their options are going in. Like I said, somehow you've got to get guys off of blocks. You got to get them in the backfield. You dictate what they're going to do. Don't let them dictate what they're going to do to you. To me, that's the key. And you got to get Hartman uncomfortable. He's way too comfortable when he's running that thing, right? You got to get him off the spot. You got to make him make quick decisions. You got to get him running around. I mean, he's the key to that whole thing. He is the key to the whole thing. And you got to make that guy really uncomfortable. You got
to think about the poise and the courage this guy has to take that delay all the way up to the line of scrimmage with that running back surrounded by these behemoths that are trying to come off and kill him. And it's like he's in the back there.
That's the technique. That's the technique of the offensive lineman. I mean, it's funny because when we were in that spring trial, we used to have people from all over the country come in and try to learn that play and learn how we taught people how to block that play. And there's some real specific technique things that you teach your linemen in the calls and the way you facilitate double teams on the line of scrimmage, then come off late on linebackers. And that long mesh is kind of the same kind of thing. It's funny. I had that epiphany when I was watching it. I'm like, this is 44 lead draws. What this is essentially, that's what we used to call it, And the play, and of course, we made a living off the play action off of it, So yeah, it's I love it. I think it's really interesting. I think it puts defense in a conundrum. I think it, like I said, you can't be right defensively if you're in a read and react situation, and you got to have answers if they're going to bring pressure in. And look, we already talked about their receivers and their ability to get open and run and Hartman to put the ball on the money. So, it's a real interesting conundrum for defensive coordinators.
Well, and here's the other part that makes it so difficult, right? All right, it's just like the old days when they ran if you're preparing for a triple option, speed option team, trying to get that emulated in practice is almost impossible. I don't think you're going to – I would imagine that Wake Forest doesn't have a quarterback on their roster that does it near as good as Hartman, let alone an opposing scout team quarterback. So that makes the preparation, in my opinion, harder for this team. Anybody agree or disagree with that statement?
Well, I would I love what you said, Mark, because I was thinking the same thing when I was watching the game. Is like, how do you defeat this? And I think I heard them say the way Clemson has played them in the past is they attack that mesh point. They're going to send pressure to the mesh point from different spots. They're going to try to get through the gaps, line up defensive linemen in the gaps and shoot the gaps just to create some type of penetration to mesh up that mesh point. I agree with you. If you sit back there and just let him and you read and react to what they're doing, you're a step late. I think that's what FSU's tried to do in the past, and they haven't had any success doing it. So I think you're right. They're going to get you either way. But for me, try to make some plays aggressively, get some negative plays, get them in 2nd and 15, maybe a couple of times, and then maybe you can get them off the field. Sitting back, no, I wouldn't do it. I'm gonna let my safeties make plays, let my corners make plays on these guys. And I'm gonna try to get after him. You got to understand, you're not going to win every time. You're probably going to give up 28. If you give up 28 points, you'll probably be happy.
Oh, if you give up 28 points to them, you're probably winning the ball. If that's all you give up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's, to me, I'm taking chances, and I'm just not allowing them to be comfortable with whatever pressure packages I have to bring. I'm just not going to let them sit back there and do that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting now when you realize that they have struggled running the ball to some extent. I don't think it speaks to the effectiveness of their run game, but the stats don't look that good. But they have run the ball 53% of the time this year versus 47 pass, obviously. But they are the 123rd ranked rushing. 100 104th, 123 yards per game.
Yeah, but they got the 8th rated passer in the country. So
Yeah.
is that a function of not having to run it, right?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, because this is my concern, right? All right. So Clemson came into that game giving up a combined 79 yards to the two FBS teams they've played. They gave up 73 to Georgia Tech and 6 to Louisiana Tech. So now it was not necessarily a highly productive day for Wake Forest against Clemson, but they did run for over 100 yards. I think it was almost 3 yards per carry, and they did so really well towards the end of the game, Mark. Fish, I'll ask you this question. Is this more indicative with Sam Hartman back and healthy finally? They got him incorporated into the offense. He's comfortable with whatever happened.
I think sometimes you got to look at those numbers and overlook them a little bit, because their passing game, a lot of it's extension of the run game. They do a lot of stuff that basically are just long pitch. They're 3-yard passes, or they get guys they get them side, they throw to their sides, and that to me sometimes skews teams that run the ball. So I think they're effective enough that Hartman doesn't have to sit back there and just toss the ball the whole game to win. And like I said, I wouldn't, because they're going to run the ball effectively in games as if that passing game continues to pass like they are too, because teams are going to have to focus on the pass as well. So I agree with JP. This is kind of like the option type teams that FSU used to play against Nebraska and stuff. You have to get them in long yardage situations. You got to put them in the 2nd and 15s. Then they can't get those routes, have to be longer. They take longer to get the ball. You can't just throw a guy have a 2-step drop, get rid of the ball on a 18-yard 2nd and 18. You're going to have to get them in those uncomfortable situations. That's how you have success against them. If you just let him sit back and throw, I believe it doesn't matter how good your defense is. If he has time to throw, you saw at Clemson, I'm telling you, and they didn't have a great day the other day, but their front seven's as good as anybody in the country. If Hartman has time, he's going to pick you apart. I don't care who he goes against. He could go against Alabama.
It makes you think that they're going to be a lot more confident coming in with their running game than they were, prior to Clemson. And was it great against Clemson? No, but it certainly kept them in the ball game. And somebody mentioned to me that they thought this was a one-dimensional offense, and I said I think what we're finding out after Clemson is that's not necessarily true. They did run for over 200 against somebody, but it wasn't a FBS team, so I didn't factor that into the equation. But listen. I think it's going to be the toughest. I think we all agree it's going to be the toughest offense this team has faced. I mean, as tough as Malik was against Louisville, this is tough in an entirely different way. You're trying to defend one guy against Louisville. Now you got to defend 6, right?
Yeah. This is strategic. This is whereas defending Malik Cunningham is tactical. This is more strategic. It's got to be team defense, and you got to have a great plan going in, and everybody knowing their roles and executing. I mean, it's a great challenge, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we do, because so far, we've met the challenges, and it's been good to see. But this is good. This is a unique one. If we can pull this one off, I agree. If they score 28, I'm happy.
Yeah, right. If they score, because I'm thinking that I think the first one to 42 probably wins, but
last guy with the ball.
We'll talk about that. We don't want to give our predictions this early in the show, but listen, I think it's the best offense Florida State will have faced. I think it'll be the toughest test so far this year, and like I said, I think that we're getting a true indication of who they are on offense with their performance against Clemson. Now they have to do the hard, come back out and repeat it, right? I mean, they're no different than the other team. You got to come back out and repeat it. You'll be on the road in a very, hopefully, full stadium. Obviously, the storm's going to impact that, Florida. I wish Florida State was going to. I hope Florida State is full speed on defense. Wouldn't it be great if Fabian Lovett could get back for this one and help slow down that damn running game? He's listed as a co-starter, but he was listed as a co-starter last week too. So we'll see how that pans out for Florida State. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball. Mark, I want to ask you this question, any of you guys this question, and y'all can all three answer. I'm fine with that because I don't know what quite to make of it other than they're probably zone blitzing and man blitzing a lot, but they are 93rd in scoring defense in the nation at over 30 points a game. They're giving up 237 yards through the air. They're 72nd in total defense at 378.5 and 68th in rush defense at 141.2. Now, all that says they're very average or not average, a little less than average. What I found fascinating, Brad Lambert, and Mark, I'm sure you know more about Brad than most of us, but Brad Lambert has been at Wake Forest before, was that first head coach at UNC Charlotte, very well regarded within the profession. They were very excited to get him back. One of the things that they are doing very well is they are sacking quarterbacks and making disruptive plays behind the line of scrimmage. They are 24th in the nation in sacks with 11, 22nd in tackle for losses with 29. They play multiple three-man front, four-man front, Mark, depends on what situation they're in. Obviously some stats don't mean anything, right? So we get too much into reading into stats sometimes, but what does the fact that they're able to come up with all these disruptive plays but struggle for the most part, what's that tell you?
I mean, I think what it tells me is that he's dialing up some things, and when he doesn't hit on it and they get blocked, they're not real good, But if he gets a guy free, or a guy has an open run or something like that, because what I did see against Clemson, they're good tacklers, right? And they play leverage real well. They do the basics really well, but I don't think they have any really outstanding athletic. They're good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think they have like a superstar type that's just going to be super disruptive. But they are all good tacklers. They all can run, especially on the second and third level. And so when he dials up something, the guy gets loose, they're making the play. They don't miss a lot of tackles. Yeah. It's kind of what
JP or Fish, y'all got any insight on those kind of very conflicting numbers?
I mean, they just don't have a lot of NFL guys on the defensive side of the ball. And I mean, their better players are on the offense. I don't know if they've purposely recruited like that. It happens. Some programs sit there and go, hey, we're going to have to outscore people. So they put less quality guys on the defensive side. They're also not very big up front on the defensive line. They're probably one of the smaller teams in the ACC. They're built more like a group of five team up front on the defensive line. So I think when you have size mismatches like they have against most teams they go against, they're going to give up a lot of yards. Their defense is kind of like a bend but don't break. They get in the red zone. They probably are more efficient at not giving up touchdowns in their defense. But their defense just doesn't have a lot of playmakers, and I think that a lot of times you want to blame the coaches, but sometimes the players make a big difference. I mean, you've seen even with Florida State. You go back to the Louisville game without Lovett, how much of a difference Lovett made. You're like, all right, this kid's a good player, but then you take him out and all of a sudden you have a backup in that's not as good. Teams are able to start to run. So you could tell what a difference certain guys make. All their talents on the offensive side of the ball. And that's why I believe they're good on offense, and their defense isn't as good. You look, they're just not, they're not physically impressive when you see their defense on the field. I don't think it's poor coaching or scheme, because I think those guys coach those kids up as much as they can, but their type of team that they have, they're going to have to outscore teams. And I don't think this weekend's going to be any different. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've probably struggled fairly consistently. It's funny that Malik Mustafa is a safety, and he leads them in tackle for losses, and sacks. So he's
that guy flies around, man.
Yeah, he does.
I was impressed with him.
Yeah, then of course I like the defensive lineman Kobe Turner. He's got 16 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and a sack, and then the linebacker Semenda's not great. He's a plugger, but 27 tackles, 4 quarterback hurries. So they are bringing pressure from the second and third levels on a regular basis. And Mark, if you're Brad Lambert, how are you? What's your game plan coming after Florida State?
I mean, pick your poison. That's the thing I love about our offense right now, is that we're equally committed to the run and to the pass, and we're executing highly on both fronts. So you got to pick. What are you going to try to take away? if it was me, every defense coordinator always says stop the run first. We do so much, coming off play action and Jordan, with his deception and ball handling, breaking the pocket, doing things like that. I think if you can stop the run, I think you got the best chance, and take your chances with him throwing the ball. I guess it's again, we're able to use multiple personnel groups. We're able to do multiple formations, different, we can go trips, we can go doubles, we can go, 3-to-1. I mean, lots of different things that we can do. So I don't know, man. You guys got to pick your poison with us right now.
Yeah, well, I was hoping we might, if we're going to get any effect from the hurricane here, I was hoping there was going to be some rain and maybe some wind, maybe force Wake Forest to run the ball a little bit more, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen. And, of course, for us, if it was a wet track, I think that helps Trey and Sean and
Lawrence
Toafili, touchdown Toafili, as he's now known affectionately around. And that's JP's man. JP loves him some Lawrence Toafili.
Yeah. Well, it's getting it done, right? Yeah, we run football this week. I mean, Fish mentioned it. They're small up front. You want to keep their offense off the field. Like some nice 9-10 play drives. Just getting 5-6 yards at a chunk. Don't get crazy, and then just play action off of it. Get them, beat them up a little bit in the run game, and then play action. Let Jordan go down the field. But I really got to feel like Mike Norvell is, talking up this offensive line like this is your game, right, Salva? This is the game you guys like, right? You go out there, some small guys.
It's got to be. We got to keep them off the field.
Right.
We got to score points, right? And we got to take time off the clock. I mean, but we got to control the game with our offense, keep their offense off the field, and take advantage of it. Look, kicking game is going to be a big thing, man. Fitzgerald, he's got to make some kicks, man. He's going to have to make these field goals and these extra points. That could be a big difference in this game. There's going to be a very small margin for error for us offensively, and we got to turnovers, kicking game, control the ball. I mean, that for us to me is the path forward to win this game.
There's a good news, bad news. Their kicker has not missed a field goal all year, so he's due. And our guy has struggled.
I don't like field goal kickers, man. Just let's get off that segment.
Our guy is due to make them. Their guy is due to miss them.
On fourth down.
So hopefully we'll see.
I've been waiting. FSU's kickers have been due for 30 years kicking. I don't want to rely on a kicker unless it's Sebastian Janikowski.
Yeah, Sebastian Janikowski and Graham and what's the Roberto Aguayo? I mean, come on.
Graham was missing another
some
night.
Good ones. Yeah.
Every other one's pretty good, or every third one's pretty good. All right, so guys, we're going to make our when we do all our predictions for the week, we'll make our FSU Wake Forest prediction last. But what is your one key, or what will we be talking about on Saturday night if FSU wins? And Fish, I'll start with you.
I think keeping Jordan upright and keeping him healthy like they have. I think if they do that and they continue to do what they've been doing on offense, putting up the numbers that they're putting, I think the offense will win this game.
Don't make a prediction.
I'm just saying if they win, the offense is going to be the reason why, not the defense. I think the defense is. I think some fans are going to be upset, and there's sometimes you have to give the other team credit. They're pretty good on that side of the ball too, So
I don't care if they score 50 as long as Florida State scores 51.
Hey, listen. Like I said before, you win by 1 or you win by 40. Nobody cares at the end of the day. Just put a W by that name.
This is going to be like Arizona State, Florida State, circa 1984.
Let's go.
That's what this game's going to be.
Triple overtime.
Mark was there for that one in Tempe. JP, what are we talking about on Saturday night?
What's that?
What are we talking about on Saturday night if Florida State won? What did they do?
Running game. 3 backs going over 100 yards apiece again. How about that? Let's do that against Wake Forest. All 3 of them get 100. I think we're talking about the running game and getting turnovers on defense. And I think like I mentioned, I think you got to gamble a little bit on defense. Send some pressure packages. You may get burned, but if you get 2 turnovers and run the football, you limit their possessions. And, that's a pretty good, because, I think Florida State's going to score. That's a pretty good recipe for winning. So I'll say the key is the run game.
Yeah, and just so folks know, JP is in the middle of a hurricane, and luckily we've got him on. We are having a little bit of audio issues with a little background noise there, but we can hear you, JP. It's just a little bit of a...
Yeah, the wind's, I don't know if it's the wind that you hear, but the wind is kicking up outside.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like what it might be.
He's using mouthwash, man. Don't worry about it.
Sully, what you got as a key to the game if FSU wins?
Well, like I said before, the margins are going to be small in this one. If we win, it's because we make a clutch kick. If we lose, it's because we miss a clutch kick.
All right. Well, I'm going with turnovers. That both these teams are going to score, and they're going to score a lot. And I think the team that gets an extra possession via a turnover sets it up with a block kick, block punt, big return. I think the extra possession, however you get it, is going to help. But I think, and the turnovers are obviously one of the ways you get an extra possession. So I think that turnovers will be key. I think the team with the least amount of turnovers enhances their chances of winning greatly. So we'll get into our picks in a second, but now we're going to kind of expand. All 4 of us love football, both college and pro football, an awful lot. And we have a lot of takes. We talk about a lot of things. And one of the things we talked about last week were some hot seat games. And we thought that there may be an ACC coach that if he got beat bad enough, may be unemployed by this week. And again, it's hard. It's hard, the profession. Some of us have been there. I have been on 2 staffs that have been fired, and one program where I went through 3 head coaches at the end of the day. So it's a tough business. So we don't mean to make light of it, but Jeff Collins was fired on Sunday after losing to UCF, and I believe Georgia Tech started their season 1-3. He was on the hot seat coming into the season, but that's not what I want to ask you guys. We all knew that. Obviously, just like Nebraska, we're hearing a number of names for that job. I want you to tell me, out of this list, who your favorite one is and who the least likely is. But these are just names we've heard. The first one, and I've been hearing this name since this summer, Deion Sanders. From Jackson State, the former FSU great, which we just call Deion, not Sanders, or Prime Time. You got Todd Monken. I believe it's Todd. There's 2 brothers, but the head coach at Army. Jamie Chadwell from Coastal Carolina. Huff from Marshall. Dell McGee, Georgia assistant coach. Bill O'Brien, a former Georgia Tech assistant who's now at Alabama as the offensive coordinator. And you can imagine he probably wants to get out of Tuscaloosa. And then Alex Atkins, the Florida State offensive line coach. All those names have come up, and there will be more. There's no doubt about that. But which of those names, Sully, do you like, and which ones do you think is least likely?
I mean, just a flat-out guess, I would think Bill O'Brien is obviously he's jonesing for a head coaching job, and if he's got this opportunity, I think he would. I guess he would take it. I don't know. I don't know what his ambitions are, if he wants to get back to the NFL or not. But if this is what he wants, I think he's touched by Saban, and so he's got the Saban juju on him right now. So I think if Georgia Tech could get him, they might take him. I think the least likely is Alex Atkins. Look, his ambitions, the way I understood it, is that he wants to go to the NFL. If the NFL called, he would go, but I don't know that he would go to another college. All
right, Fish.
Yeah, I don't see it being any coach that hasn't coached before. I mean, Georgia Tech needs to make a hire that it's someone that's had success or shown success. I don't know about to me, Bill O'Brien's just another retread. I don't know. I mean, they want to run him out of Alabama at times for the offense that he's been calling. I know he basically has the who's who of talent. I could see them going after Deion or someone like that. I think it's going to be a Power 5 guy, somebody, maybe even a Dan Mullen, somebody that's coached at the Power 5 level, has had, and I know Deion hasn't, but if it's going to be somebody like Deion, at least he's won a lot. It's got to be somebody flashy. Georgia Tech's a very good job. And I think, a lot of people, when they look at expansion, I think they'll be one of the teams that people are going to look at because they're in Atlanta, a lot of eyeballs. I think if they lowered the standards just a little bit and allowed a few more kids, and I think Georgia Tech's a sleeping giant. I think they could have a lot of success there if they have the right coach. So I'll say either Dion or someone like a Dan Mullen.
All right. JP?
Man, I just can't see Dion and Georgia Tech getting married. I covered that program for a couple of years when I was in Atlanta when Paul Johnson was the coach. And I always wondered about, why all he did was win 9 games a year and beat Georgia, once every 3 years. I'm like, if you're at Georgia Tech, that's about all you can really hope for these days, right? I mean, are they a sleeping giant? I mean, because they're in Atlanta, because they're in a fertile recruiting ground. Yeah, but I mean, it's just their DNA is so, it's so academic. It's just it doesn't.
They have won a championship before. I mean,
What's that?
Right? They have won a championship before. So if you get it right there, not a lot of schools can say that.
Yeah, I remember that. It was kind of that was a co-championship.
Yeah,
Whatever. It's a championship, right? I don't know. I don't see Dion I see Dion in the city of Atlanta. That works. But Dion in Georgia Tech, I just don't know if that works. And I think Dion, frankly, would hold out for a better job, to be quite honest. I think Dion at some point is going to have a very, very elite job to go to. What's that?
Auburn.
Yeah, I was going to say Auburn.
Yeah, Auburn is there. I think he's going to have an elite job that he can go after where they really have the resources and the NIL and all that to put into it. I just don't think Georgia Tech is ever going to be a major player. I don't know why. I don't think they will. But, because you have Georgia right down the road too, and they're just so freaking dominant right now. I don't see Prime. I think Bill O'Brien's actually a really good fit for Georgia Tech. That sounds about right.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think they're not going to hire a guy that has not been a head coach before, so that automatically factors Alex out. I kind of agree with you. Are you going to? Does Dion need to go to a Group of 5 program and turn that into a winner before he gets handed over the reins to a Power 5 program? No disrespect to Dion or Jackson State, but running a Georgia Tech Auburn is totally different than running a FCS program. It's totally different. It's not even. They're not even in the same stratosphere. I think for him to go from Jackson State to somebody's going to do it. Because it's all about winning the press conference, right? And they think it's going to solve all the recruiting woes. But the NIL levels the playing field for everybody if you got enough money. We talked to a guy. Fish, it might have been we talked to a guy with Rivals who thinks that because the NIL and all the money Northwestern has, that they are sleeping giants. So the NIL, they got a lot of money in Chicago. But anyway, I think Munkin, Huff, or Chadwell to me. Huff's got the blessing of Saban. He coached was an assistant for Saban, has won at Marshall. And then Munkin, I think his offense, they're probably not going to do Munkin because of the guy they had before.
Paul Johnson.
Paul Johnson. He ran a similar offense. So you're probably not going to –
It works.
They've done that.
It worked for Georgia.
It does work. And it would even the playing field. But Chadwell, I think, is another guy that'll be high on their list. But listen, at the end of the day, it's probably not going to be any of those guys. But those are the guys that we're hearing now, right? All right, so let's move into our hot seat game for this week. Wow, I don't know if any of you guys caught the Auburn-Missouri game last week. But Eli Drinkowitz should be the one on the hot seat because he gave the damn game away. He had the ball going into the end zone. All he had to do was score a touchdown, and he likely wins the game, but he did not want to leave any time on the clock. They would have won 21-14. Instead, they chose to play for a field goal. Their field goal kicker missed a 22-yard field goal to win the game in regulation, and then Auburn beats them in overtime or drove down and kicked the field. Anyway, they lost the game, and they extended Brian Harson's employment at Auburn by 1 week. Now that you got LSU coming to town, Is LSU game for Brian Harsin a must-win game with LSU not being who they've said who they have been over the course of the last 4 or 5 years? This is not the 2019 national championship team. Fish, does Brian Harsin have to win the LSU game to remain employed at Auburn? Because listen, this is a bad situation, right? They can't recruit because that's all anybody talks about is that they're going to fire him. So they're cutting their own throat. When does this weird relationship end at Auburn?
Listen, every coach at Auburn's on the hot seat. You get that job, and from the moment you have the first day you're on campus, they already want to fire you. So every game's a must win. They got to win this week. They got to win next week. I mean, the guy could go 10-2 this year, and they're going to still want to. They fired what's his name? The coach. That coach at Ole Miss.
Tuberville was the winningest coach in the SEC.
He won like 6. He won like 6 straight against Alabama, and then loses. And the 1 year he loses, Auburn fans are fickle.
When they fired Tuberville, he was the winningest coach in that time frame in the SEC.
I believe it. They're the worst. Honestly, I would not take that job. But yeah, this week's a must win. Like I said, every week at Auburn's a must win the rest of your career. Like this guy has to win again. It's crazy, but
I bet you Dan Mullen's trying to get that job, and I guarantee you, Kevin Steele was probably up at Auburn instead of Miami last week. That's one.
Listen, if they're willing to pay you like $40 million to go,
he was having lunch with Louder on Saturday and not coaching that damn defense down in Miami.
Harson's going to make about $35 million if they fire him. All right, so between him and Dan Mullen, they're going to. I mean, who was the other coach they just fired the year before? I mean, they owe like $40 million. To coaches at Auburn.
Gus Bus.
Yeah, Gus. They still owe Gus. They gave Gus an extension and then fired him. So between him and Harsin, they owe about $50 million.
What a mess that is. Half of me wanted to see him get beat on Saturday just so they'd put the poor guy out of his misery. I mean, he looks miserable. I don't think I've ever seen a coach that looked that miserable after a damn win than at Brian Harsin when they interviewed him.
You talking about you live with one.
What's that?
You live with one.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Hey, and I got a little brother that's the same damn way.
Just like
we don't. My brother and I don't talk a lot for obvious reasons. We try to be above. We don't talk football a lot. We talk family and stuff all the time. But talking to him, one of the games they won this year, he was not particularly happy with the way his side of the ball played. So
yeah.
I was like, "Listen, you won a ball game. Would you just enjoy it for a second, and then you can get mad in the film room tomorrow?" So, but yeah, so Fish, Sully or JP, is this a must-win game for Harsin against Phillips?
It's always a must-win. I agree with this. It depends on if the coach is banging the booster's daughter or not. I don't know. It's always something going on there.
Oh man, you're going.
You have some inside scoop.
You're going way back. That's 91, I think.
Wow.
Isn't there always something going on in Auburn? Isn't there always something in the background? The drug ring. If this one's doing that, there's always something going on in Auburn. It's just that's just the kind of place. It's kind of like Clemson was back in the day. There's always something. Danny Ford. It's just something going on. So,
hey, I like Danny Ford. Let's not.
Oh yeah, I didn't say I didn't like him. I just said there was always something going on. You know what I'm saying?
He's an Alabama guy. Let's not throw him into that hole.
Hey, they're 3-1 if they beat LSU this week, and they're 4.
I didn't say it was bad. I just said there's always something.
Oh, there is. It's a train wreck.
Say about Danny. Hey, Sully, what do you think? Must win for my man at Auburn?
Oh, yeah. They're just waiting for an excuse to fire him.
All right. So we'll leave coaches on the hot seat alone, except for one guy. We're going to talk about him as we go through our game picks. But all right, so we're going to go through our game picks. We're going to pick the better games in the ACC, and I say that kind of sarcastically because the first one I think we're all going to. I'll just ask: does anybody see Boston College beating Louisville? Louisville's at Boston College. I think we'd all call that We have 4 helmet stickers for Louisville on that one.
I'm not going against the grain on that one. You guys could go off that ledge.
Well, I know one game that I would definitely probably, well, I don't know. Virginia Tech at North Carolina. North Carolina is awful on defense, but they're somehow a 9-point favorite. I think I'd probably, if I was betting on this game, take Virginia Tech in the points because everybody's offense gets well against North Carolina and Mac Brown.
Right.
Who do you guys have just straight up? Virginia Tech at North Carolina.
I don't think Virginia Tech's going to get a lot of wins this year. I think North Carolina will figure some things out defensively at some point. They can't be that bad. So yeah, I like North Carolina scoring a lot of points.
Yeah.
What was the score of the App State game again? It was like 60 to 60.
63-61.
Yeah, same score line.
Yeah. Virginia Tech ain't scoring in the 60s, man.
No,
they're lucky to break 20. Listen,
is that defense? I don't know.
North Carolina is not going to find an answer on defense this year. It's just they're historically bad. But Virginia Tech, this is one of the worst Virginia Tech teams probably in the last 20 years. They're not a good football team. I like North Carolina. I don't know if they'll cover the number, but I definitely like North Carolina to win outright.
I think North Carolina's going to win. I just think it's going to be 50 to 60.
Take the over.
Over.
All right. Well, I'm going. Golly, I really want to pick Virginia Tech. I really do. I know that I'm jaded by the fact that I'm not a North Carolina fan or a Mac Brown fan. So
Don't put emotion into your picks, man.
I'm going North Carolina.
Virginia
At some
Tech is
point,
terrible.
my words of Chisholm is going to have the words of Chisholm to the North Carolina defense, and they're going to figure out how to hold somebody under 50 points and like 1,000 yards of offense. And Virginia Tech is the right offense for Gene Chiswick's problems. All right, a game that I can't believe that we're picking, but I've been so impressed with Duke this year and what Mike Elko has done. Of course, I'm sure that he inherited they had a couple tough years in Cutcliffe's last 2 years, but he inherited a good culture at Duke because Cutcliffe has always done a great job of that. They got a transfer quarterback in, but UVA at Duke, 3-1 Duke. Duke's a -3 favorite. I'm going Duke in this one. Virginia's been very inconsistent in the games I've seen them play this year under Tony Elliott. Who do you got, Fish?
I do like Duke's quarterback, Riley Leonard. I saw him play last year against Louisville. He's really good. But I just think Virginia will be too much this week. I like Virginia. I think, Elko's done a great job there, but I think Virginia will feel themselves this week and win pretty handily.
Ooh, all right. Fish going out on a limb there. Should have bet you on this one myself.
Here's a stat for you. They're 7-0 in the last 7 games against the spread against Duke, and they're 7-0 straight up. So I like trends.
It's a new day in Durham, buddy. It's a new day in Durham.
Still Duke.
JP, who you got?
I'm going with Fish. I like Virginia. Duke, I think maybe look, they'll score points. Leonard's a good quarterback, but defensively, I don't think they're all that good. Virginia's just better on both sides of the lines of scrimmage. I'll go Virginia.
All right, Sully.
I'm going to go with the hot quarterback. I'm going to go Duke at home.
Yep. All right. Well, a game that's got another strange line. Number 7, Kentucky at number 14, Ole Miss. Ole Miss, a 6.5-point favorite. Both teams 4-0. Ole Miss has got a quarterback situation. Neither quarterback has been great. They finally decided on the kid that is not named Luke Altmaier. I don't remember. I think it's Jackson Dart.
Jackson Dart, yeah.
Kentucky, man, until Mark Stoops has built one of the toughest teams in the SEC, if not all of college football, and I think Kentucky's tougher than Ole Miss. They've got a better quarterback than Ole Miss, and certainly I think a better defense. So I think this is a 10-point Kentucky win. If I was a gambling man, I'd be all over this game. I got Kentucky.
I love Kentucky in this one too. I always look for good teams that are getting points. and this is a good team getting points and a lot of points in this particular game. This line's probably a product of how much Ole Miss scores. But look at the defense, look at the opponents. You're not gonna run up and down the field on Mark Stoops' defense like that. I don't see it happening. And Will Levis is a pretty damn good quarterback. So I think Kentucky wins the game outright. So I'll definitely take the 6.5 points.
All right, who you got, Sully?
I haven't seen Ole Miss play this year, so it's totally blind for me. But I do agree. I do like the way Kentucky plays. I do like their culture and their heart. So I'm going to take Kentucky on this.
I think it's going to be a good game both ways. I'll go with you guys on this, Kentucky. I was going to lean Ole Miss, but Kentucky has a better defense. I think both offenses will score, but Kentucky could get the stops where Ole Miss can't, and I'll take Kentucky.
All right, you got Alabama going to a Arkansas team who went through a heartbreaking loss. I've never seen a field goal hit the very top of the upright before. It did do that. I would have thought if it landed on the very top of it, it would have counted, but apparently not. But if I didn't see it, if I'm being told, it actually landed on the very top of the upright. But anyway, long story short, they did lose on the last play of the game. Now that you have Alabama to come into town as a 17-point favorite, is there any chance that Arkansas beats them outright? And if you were betting this game, who are you taking with the 17.5 points Alabama's given up? I think it's Alabama on both, but anybody else think that Arkansas can come back after a Texas A&M game and beat Alabama?
I like Arkansas. I saw them play in the Outback Bowl last year. The quarterback is a hoss, man. That boy's a big old boy. And their offensive line is huge. I think where is this game? This game in
at Arkansas.
Fayetteville. Yeah, I definitely like Arkansas in a 17. I don't know if they could win outright, but I'll definitely take them. I don't know, guys. I don't think Alabama's all that just yet. I mean, I think they will be, as Saban teams always are. They'll be better at the end of the year, but I'll definitely take Arkansas in the 17 for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing about Alabama this year, their O-line isn't as good as – it wasn't great last year, and they're not as good this year. And the one thing they lack on offense is their wide receivers are not the playmakers they've had. So it takes them longer to score. I think that this is a grounded out, pounded out. I think Pittman knows as a coach, he's an offensive line coach, he's going to roll that big old line out there, run the ball, keep this game close. I think this could be a good game for – 4 quarters. Maybe Alabama wears them out at the end, but yeah, I definitely think Arkansas will keep it within the number. And I think it could be a really good game.
All right. Let's go move on. We got everybody's pick on that one? Everybody go through it?
I was just going to say, Saban does a great job of taking away what you do well, and that quarterback is, what he's going to stop. But I will say this, I agree with Fish that they're really struggling on offense a little bit. And that wide receiver thing is an issue for them. So I'll take Alabama to win, but yeah, I think I'll take the 17 with Arkansas.
All right. Number 17, Texas A&M 3-1 going to Mississippi State. If I wrote this down correctly, Mississippi State is a 4-point favorite. It's one of those things where I don't understand how a ranked team is a underdog in any capacity went to an unranked team. But listen, Texas A&M has struggled offensively. I think they got an issue at quarterback. They don't really seem to have an answer with either kid. Obviously, Jimbo has a tendency to get conservative. Mississippi State has run the ball more this year than they traditionally do. Does the Pirate beat up on Jimbo, or does Jimbo get halfway to 8 wins on Saturday?
I think this is the grossest colored palette of any game in college football, right? I mean, just that gross maroon everywhere. And then you throw the cowbells on top of it. I want to be nowhere near this game. But I will say this, Texas A&M has gutted out a couple here late, right, against Miami, and so but they're not very good either. I don't know. I really don't know what to think on this game. I'll take Mississippi State at home. The Cowbells just here and take the coup out of you, and I think the Pirates will put up some points. Quarterback situation is a little.
I'm going to go A&M. I'm really conflicted because I love Max. Brad Johnson's my boy. So I got to root for Max and Jake. But yeah, I love that sound. It's an ugly colored palette game. That crap dull maroon, the both of them. It's one of those games like you don't know who. You keep thinking who. All right, which one's A&M and which one's this shit. I don't know who's who. And I really don't care. Turn the game off. Yeah, but I'll plus the more wins A&M gets. I'm not a Jimbo Fisher fan, but I love Max, so I'm going to go A&M.
Well, I want whatever team wins that makes the most entertaining between this could be an all-time post-game press conference game between Jimbo and the Pirate Mike Leach. So I'm going to lean towards Leach because I kind of like his quirkiness a little bit. He's one of the unique personalities in college football. I really don't know who to pick in the game. I think it would be more interesting if he won because then he could probably take some shots at Texas A&M for buying their class. I think it might make for a more entertaining post game. So I'm going to go with Mississippi State. And plus, when my father was coaching at Memphis State back in the day, we got the Emory Ballard show every Sunday, and I got used to the Cowbells, and I kind of liked them as a 10-year-old kid. And you got used to it. It was unique. It's unique, and of course now it's just like now everybody plays Sandstorm before kickoff. You just get tired of hearing it. So I get it. South Carolina did Sandstorm, and it was unique. Then everybody else jumped on top of it. But the Cowbells are still unique to Mississippi State. So I'm going Mississippi State. All right. So then we got LSU 3-1.
You don't want me to give my prediction.
Oh, go ahead, Fish. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's all right. You know who I'm taking anyway. So
you're going with your man Jimbo. I know.
Hey, Mississippi State. Listen, Leach and his offense struggles against good defenses. Texas A&M has a very good defense. I just think they'll shut down their offense and win probably 20-13 this week, something like that.
You know who ought to play each other a lot is Texas A&M and Iowa. A lot of great.
I don't want to see Iowa play.
Really bad offense. A lot of really bad offense.
Forget about Iowa.
Yeah, well, they're awful, and they were my Big Ten pick of the year. And Tyler Van Dyke going back to something else. Boy,
don't worry, I picked Nebraska. So don't
ACC quarterback of the year. All right, so LSU at Auburn. We kind of talked about this game, so just quick, your pick. I'm going LSU. I think Auburn's a mess, and that's the reason I'm picking against them.
Same.
You guys, Fish. You get this one first.
Oh man, I'll take LSU. It's going to be ugly. I'll take LSU.
Yeah, I'll go LSU. The more LSU wins we get, the better our win looks. So
that's right. LSU. You're right. Sully?
Same.
All right.
LSU. Auburn's a train wreck.
All right. Well, in a game that has probably little interest outside of the three of us, at least on this call, but I want to pick it. We're all three follow the program. East Carolina 2-2 at USF 1-3, playing in Boca Raton. Listen, this is a very important game for Jeff Scott. I think was on their message boards last week after their loss to Louisville. He's got to win some Conference USA games or American Conference games. I think this is a huge game for him. JP, you follow our program a little bit closer than Mark and I. Who do you got in this game with USF?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm a big Jeff Scott fan. I just there was so much hope after that UF performance. A game they should have won, no question about it. And then you see, Florida go and play against Tennessee, a top 10 team, and you're like, well, damn, what's going on at USF? They can play with big dogs, but was that just an inspiring performance? I mean, Florida looking ahead, and then they just go completely lay an egg in Louisville. Louisville was coming off a loss, so you expect them to play well and get another win. I just think USF is more like the team that played Florida than the team that played Louisville. But they got to show some consistency. Maybe they bonded a little bit this week down at FAU. everybody got together and they'll put their best foot forward out there. But I think they've got Jeff's got to win at least 3 conference games this year, probably to keep us. I don't think Michael Kelly wants to fire him. In fact, I know he doesn't want to fire him. He can't afford to fire him this year. So I'm going to go with my heart and go USF.
Sully, who you got?
Yeah, I think it was just a simple reaction of where one game, you lose one game and it beats you twice. When they lost to UF, I just think it just took so much out of them emotionally. And they're a young team, a young program, trying to build something, and they just didn't know how to handle it. So I'm going to chalk that up to that and say that, this is one they need to win. They will win. And I'm a JP. I'm going to put my heart in root one.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Listen, I get pulled out for 2 reasons. I was at South Florida for 7 seasons and love my time in Tampa. One of my favorite times in my entire life was the 7 years I spent in Tampa. Love that job, love that university, pulling for them to do well. And of course, listen, they are playing a team that's well coached. Mike Houston's a great coach at East Carolina, but I'm going to pick USF, and it might get proved wrong, but I'm pulling for Jeff, pulling for the program, and hope they get it back on track. And this is not a great East Carolina team. They've had some really good teams in the past. They've got a good quarterback, but I think that USF will come out and play some inspired football. We'll find out a lot about USF and their resiliency after the 2 games that they played the last 2 weeks. Fish, you're down in that area. Who you got?
Yeah, I mean, they gave up 50 to BYU, 41 to Louisville. I'm not as high on USF as you guys. I think East Carolina will win the game, and the inevitable is going to happen. So.
All right, so you got East Carolina. All right, well, that makes me feel better.
Let's kill you, our Fish.
USF. What? Fish has no heart. Fish has no heart. He's heartless. He has no heart.
Buy my service and I'll pick
Of course, the other problem is he doesn't know Jeff Scott. So.
You heard what I said, JP.
I heard what you said.
I said, buy my service and I'll pick you, man.
That's right. Hey. That's right. Now we know how Fish does his pick. All right.
It's called Fish Karma, man. You do me wrong, you don't win ball games. Trust me.
Yeah, well, all right. So now we're going to sneak out to the left coast for a little bit. 2 surprise teams. Number 15, Washington, at a sneakily 4-0 Chip Kelly coach UCLA team. Washington -3, surprise team of the Pac-12, and I think possibly besides USC, they're only. Well, UCLA too. Probably the only 3 chances they have at getting to the college football playoff for those 3 teams. So it's a big game in the Pac-12. Who you guys got? I've seen very little of either because I'm getting older and I cannot really do Pac-12 late. I would say this. I love both schools' uniforms. They got 2 of the best uniforms in college football. I don't know who to pick. Ronnie McKeefery, a buddy of mine, is a strength coach at Washington. We were together at South Florida for 6 of the 7 years I was there. So I'm going to go with the Huskies. And I've been a good enough player. Washington was one of the schools I wanted to visit when I was a recruit, and I was a marginal recruit. So that never transpired. Who you got, JP?
Your reasons had absolutely nothing to do with football, so
you're exactly right. You're exactly right. I told you I hadn't seen it.
My dad brought me a UCLA shirt when I was about 6 years old.
There you go.
And that was I must have had that till I was about 15, man. I wore that thing out. It had the white, and that blue, and that gold, man. I thought that was the best colors. The best uniforms, the best. So I've always been a UCLA fan. Of course, I'm old enough to remember John Wooden and some of those teams as well, growing up early. So, but then again, I hate Chip Kelly. So, look, Washington is impressive. But where is this game? This game in LA?
At UCLA, yep.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
with all 2,000 fans.
I'll pick my favorite uniforms.
They're Miami left.
UCLA. Go Bruins.
All right. Who you got, Sully?
I mean, I don't have a good feel either way. I mean, I think Washington, they had, I forgot who it was, but they looked really good. Looked pretty tough.
They beat Michigan State last week.
Yeah, that's right. That was the one. That was the one I saw. So they looked good there to me, and you know, I think they're a little tougher, maybe hard nosed. I don't know. I'm gonna go Washington on this one.
Fish.
Washington's very, very good. Hey, they have our old buddy Michael Penix as their quarterback, who has like 1,300 plus yards, 12 touchdowns, 1 pick.
Apparently,
what?
Indiana bought Fish's service. I know where this is going.
No. Actually, I'm gonna take Washington just because they've been pretty good. I've taken them twice with the spread this year, and they've covered both times. So they're a pretty good team. But it's at UCLA, so it'll be tough. I think the game will be closer than it probably should be. But I'll take Washington because I'm going to roll with them this year.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up with a huge weekend in the ACC Atlantic. Undefeated NC State at Clemson. Undefeated Florida State host a second-place Atlantic Wake Forest team. This has big implications. Obviously, we're going to finish with Florida State. So NC State at Clemson. Clemson, a touchdown favorite. Fish, we'll let you start with this one. Who you got with the Wolfpack and the Tigers?
It's at Clemson, so if it was at NC State, I would take NC State. I think they're the better team at home. But Clemson's pretty good at home, so I'm going to take Clemson to win this game.
All right. Sully?
Yeah, same reason. I think Clemson at home, environment, they got a lot of confidence last week. I'm going to go Clemson.
JP?
I like Clemson's defense. I like them at home. Leary hasn't been as good as advertised this year. It's probably more about his supporting cast than anything else. So, I'm gonna go Clemson.
I'm going to be the contrarian. I picked NC State as my Atlantic division champ. I will pick them until they get beat. I think this will be the best defense that Clemson has faced. I don't think we'll see the proficient and efficient DJ that we did against Wake Forest. NC State's I think they beat Clemson last year, so they don't necessarily go in doubting themselves like Clemson's the king of college football as they had been prior to last year, along with Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State. I think this is a different Clemson team, and I think NC State gets it done. So they will continue to be tied for the lead in Atlantic with whomever. Well, they would be by themselves as Florida State lost, but we'll see what happens there. All right, so you guys got Clemson. I've got the Wolfpack. It hurts me to do that. Well, I'm not really crazy about voting for either team, but I'll go with NC State in this one. And then, of course, to wrap it up, guys, Florida State, a 7-point favorite over Wake Forest. Florida State ranked 22 and 23 in either of the two polls, and then Wake Forest 21 and 22. A huge game. I think it's going to be a track meet, particularly with Florida State possibly down some guys on defense. We don't know the status of Verse or Lovett other than that they are listed on the depth chart, but they were last week as well. Listen, Wake Forest played an emotional game and lost. Florida State kind of took care of business last week. I think that matters. You had fewer frontliners extend themselves against Boston College than Wake Forest did. A lot of confidence in Tallahassee. I do think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think, Fish, you might have alluded that there was going to be some people upset with the defense at the end of this one. At the end of the day, I don't think it matters as long as they win. I think it's going to be a track meet. I'm going Florida State 44, Wake Forest 42. Who you got, Fish?
Who I got?
All right, go, JP.
JP, you could go.
I like exactly what you said, Pat. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I'll take Wake in the 7, but I think FSU wins it. I'd like to see FSU really control it and keep it, a much lower scoring game. But I don't see that happening. I like the vibe of Jordan Travis to win games. He just, and this team in general, they showed me that they know how to win, and they win in the clutch. And I think this is going to be another close game, and you got the home field advantage. So I'm gonna say FSU 41, Wake 38.
Fish.
It's the year they're redeeming, so I guess Fitzgerald is going to kick the game-winning field goal, 41-38. All right.
All right, Mark. You will leave you in last.
Oh, my thunder, man! That's exactly Fitzgerald kicked it with a
You
minute
should have
left.
gone first. You should have gone first.
He kicked it with a minute left, 41-38, and Shane Brown with the pick in prevent defense to seal the win. That's what I got.
Well, hey, that Shaheem has proved he's a big time player. He's helped seal 2 victories. So
He's the closer, baby.
I'm a little bit concerned. We all pick Florida State. We know what that happens when they do it on ESPN game day. But of course, I think we're just as knowledgeable, if not more so, than those guys. And we don't have to deal with Pat McAfee on a daily basis. So
If we win and Clemson wins in a couple of weeks, we keep it rolling. We beat NC State. Could it happen? Could game day be back in Tallahassee?
wow, that would be something else. That would be something else. That would be fun. That'd be fun. It would be. You talk about an environment, a night game against Clemson, but we got 2 weeks to go.
Yeah,
we got to get through these next 2 weeks.
Take one game at a time.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is the definitive part of the season where they need to have blinders on, right? I mean, you can afford to look ahead against some of the teams they played, particularly Duquesne and Boston College, but not these others. Hey, guys, I know we've done a little bit longer show than we normally do. JP, Fish, stay safe. Always enjoy these things. Could talk college football for hours. Mark, thanks for breaking down everything with us, particularly the mesh play, the delayed draw zone, whatever you want to call it, that they run. It's kind of an interesting play in college football. Guys, I hope we're all right.
Get it.
I hope we're all right. I hope we're back here next week talking about a 5-0. Can you believe we're already 5 weeks into this damn college football season?
All right. Wow.
It goes back by like that. But guys, I appreciate it. And Mark, as usual, we're going to let you sign us off.
Go Noles, scalp them.